right. Well, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Shop and Chivalry podcast. I'm here with a special guest today, the famous, the great and powerful Chet Landry. How are you, my friend?
I am well, sir.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Well, and fresh off the show, I see.
Yeah, I literally just walked out, got in the truck and drove this way. So
excellent. So for those of you who don't know, although I'm sure you all do, this is Chet Landry. He's one of the anchors, the co-host of Good Morning Mississippi here on WLOX. Is that an ABC or CBS affiliate?
It's both.
It's both.
We have ABC, we have CBS, and then there's like Bounce and Circle, and there's like 5 stations running now.
No kidding. I'm excited to dive into like the sort of what you can talk about as far as the what goes into making that show happen.
Sure.
But first, I'd like to start with you. Who are you, Chet?
I'm Chet Landry. I'm a Biloxi boy. I was born and raised here on the Gulf Coast. Went to high school at Biloxi High. Went to Southern Miss. Majored in criminal justice and got into some intern work out of college and realized I didn't want to do that.
Well, what was your initial feeling going towards criminal justice? Like, why? Why pursue that?
So I was originally a pre-law major.
Okay.
And I sat on the docket of a judge, friend of mine. It's irrelevant who, but this judge wore a shirt. I was with that judge and we were sitting on his friend's docket. And he wore a shirt that said, "A good lawyer knows the law. A great lawyer knows the judge." And I was like, that's not right. That's not how that's supposed to work. So
it reminds me of a joke. What do you call a lawyer who doesn't know the law? A judge.
A judge. There you go. Exactly. You've only further articulated my point. So, I was like, this is probably not for me. So and then I was, the whole time I'm a performer, so I majored in musical theater. I'm in a musical theater, program. I get to my directing class and my lead actor doesn't show up for the piece that we're doing for my grade, my final grade. He just doesn't show up.
Oh, how wonderful.
It's the same scenario, like same things, law, theater. So I had to go on stage with a script in my hand playing his part. And the teacher's like, I'm going to have to give you a D or I'll let you withdraw. And I was like, oh, I'll withdraw.
Yeah.
I don't want that I'll just take a withdrawal. So that was easy. But then I was like, so I ended up into criminal justice. It was more about the psychology of the criminal mind. So when I graduated, I felt like I was dangerous. Yeah. I felt like I probably could go do something. Probably can't get away with it, but I feel like I have insight now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love it. It actually, before I started with WLOX, I had no journalism experience. I mean, I'd written for the Sun Herald when I was in high school. I wrote for the Coast Youth section, which was not around for a long period of time, but when it was there were a handful of us that would audition by writing something, and then Mike Lacey, who also works at WLOX, was our editor. And so he had a group of us, and it was just on Mondays, it was like the B section, it was the Coast Youth, and it was all written by youth on the coast. So that was really the only experience I had, but the criminal justice degree really comes into play now because there's a whole investigative side to it that, you're digging and you're asking, tough questions, and you're not stopping until you get the answers, and you're not just going for just any kind of answer. You're looking for answers that are supported by the facts that you have. So it helped.
When I hear you say that, I can't help but think that there's a little bit of, and this might be the flaw in maybe police interviewing, is that it's sort of, you're using a technique of confirmation bias, right? The facts, insofar as you know them to be factual, you are asking questions to confirm them as being the reality, right?
It is, because you have, and there's a whole side to what I do now that is there's the on the record side and there's the off the record side.
Sure.
So, and we hear a lot of things, and some things aren't confirmed, they're assumed, so it's off the record, and some things are confirmed, but they're not allowed to be discussed yet, so that's off the record as well. So sure. There comes a time where you have information that maybe other people don't have, and it helps to shape the questions that you're asking. So it gives you it's kind of like having insider information, right?
Yeah.
You kind of know what's going on, and you can ask more pointed questions so that you can get the answer out that maybe they're not ready to give.
Right. No, I let me tell you, I completely understand this, because when I started doing this podcast, and if you didn't know, I covered the alderman and the mayoral race in Ocean Springs. Ooh. So I've got like 30 episodes where I talked to all those people, right? And I was telling my wife, I wish I could write a book about the conversations that we have when the camera's off, when it's no longer recording, and after we've had like an hour and a half, 2 hour conversation, and I've developed some sort of trust with this individual whom I never met prior to this, and then just the things that they tell me about the behind the scenes stuff is just, I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
There's a couple of large hands full of that in the industry that I'm in. It's fun.
Oh, I've got no doubt.
I grew up watching Dave Elliott and Karen Abernathy and Rhonda Widener and Brad Kessie. And these are all names that Brad's the news director now. Karen, Dave are still there. Rhonda actually just retired. That's how I ended up in the role I'm in now. But it's one thing to grow up seeing these people on television, and then it's another to be, working in a desk, right across from them and hearing or watching how their day goes on.
Or watching them on your podcast, like right across.
Or watching them on your podcast, yes. Yeah, it's there's a lot that goes into there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into what you actually see on television.
Sure.
That no one, unless you're like you're locked and loaded, you're engaged, that you'll ever know. Or you'll ever, like, I never even thought of half of the things that go into putting on a newscast.
Well, when I first started this podcast and I got all the equipment and I realized everything that I needed, it completely transformed not just the way that I viewed video production, but just how people get different scenes. Like, I've learned so much about videography and editing, and talking with a buddy of mine, Foad Zayed, who would be a great person to highlight on WLOX. I don't know if you know who that is. He's from Ocean Springs. His dad is Dr. Zayed. His brother owns ZCB Boats in Ocean Springs, builds some of the most beautiful boats. Sure. Shout out to Hussein Zayed. But Foad has a production company. He did something like 100 some odd episodes of Duck Dynasty, became very, very close friends with the Robertsons. When A&E, I think that was the company that shot it, wanted to get on the Robertson property, Phil, I think that's a patriarch, right? Mm-hmm. Phil wanted Foad to be there with them. So they couldn't go on his property without Foad because they trust him. Foad's a big outdoorsman, sure. Does a lot of fishing, but he does music videos in Hollywood. He does, right now he's in the Bahamas. If you've watched Shark Week, you've watched his...
I've seen many Shark Weeks.
Yeah, you've probably seen him on TV with a camera rig and never knew it.
Oh.
But he does most of that. Great dude. Great awesome. Dude. Salt of the earth guy. Yeah. But there's, of course, there's so much to it. And of course, now you do Facebook Live on the show in the morning, and that's amazing because I never really kind of knew how everything was set up and what it looked like. So there's definitely a lot to that.
People ask me, I get two questions most frequently: why I'm constantly moving. Because I don't stop. Like when the commercial break happens, I'm like, and it's so I don't fall asleep. Because I need
You've got odd hours.
I do. I wake up in the morning at 2:00.
Yeah.
Between 1:45 and 2:00. My body's starting to wake me up now on that time schedule, so it's changed. But I'm up at 2:00, 2:15 at the very latest. I'm getting up. I'm getting coffee. I'm getting myself together because I don't have to be there until 3:30. I'm not on the air until 5. And that's going to change now that Desiree is leaving. Until we get a replacement for her, Meggan and I will switch up that 4:30 half hour. Okay. It's been interesting, but I constantly like to keep moving because it helps me to stay. I would stay awake, but it helps me to look alert. Because I've in the very beginning I would watch myself, and when the camera comes back on, I'm just like. My eyes are half open, and I'm literally just like, it's like I have to keep moving her because I was sitting down at first. I'm like, I can't sit down, I can't sit, I got to stand. So we're standing. Meggan and I are standing for that whole 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so, and then the box.
She's in probably pumps or stilettos or something, or some sort of heel.
She is wearing wedges or heels. On rare occasions, she'll wear some flip flops. Like it's the things you don't see behind the scenes.
Sure.
She'll have a beautiful shirt and a dress and flip flops.
Yeah.
And we've got a weather guy that'll wear a smashing suit and a pair of tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Some Chuck Taylors.
Yeah. Why not?
Absolutely.
But which is becoming more and more accepted, by the way.
Right. Exactly. It's like news folks have been doing it for years because we're standing and we want to be in comfortable shoes. The other question is there's a box on the desk and it's got a wheel.
I've noticed that. What is that?
It's the teleprompter.
Okay.
So it used to be that the teleprompter was in front of the lens, and that was when we had the analog cameras. We've gone digital, and they're all automated, they're robotic, so they hang from the ceiling, and the prompters are directly above the lens now. So I have it for the 5 o'clock half hour and the 6 o'clock half hour. She has it for the 5:30 to 6:30. So we switch back and forth. And sometimes you'll see somebody like holding like a wand like this.
Yeah.
That wand is very inconsistent for me. I don't like it. The one that we use, the box, is the wheel, and it's hardlined into the system, so it's not remote or anything like that. So when I'm turning it, I'm rolling the teleprompter, so we can read. And sometimes things happen. Sometimes the producers will float a story because we're over or we're under, and they'll float the wrong one while we're in the middle of reading, and it disappears, and something else pops up, and then it reappears, but at the top you've already gotten halfway through it. So you'll it's taken me some getting used to being able to not look like I just saw a train wreck whenever that happens, because that's what I feel like.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a second to be able to just relax and just find my place.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's video rolling, so you don't see us. We're just reading, and there's video happening over what we're saying. So a lot of times you don't see that. But
I've noticed it once or twice where maybe you're talking about a story, and then I think maybe the next sequence of video comes in, but you're still talking about that old story. So then they replay that video and bring that back. I've seen that. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate, one, how smooth, because I'm sure those things happen more than we realize, but how smooth y'all still do the show despite the chaos that sometimes occurs.
It's not as much chaos as you would think. There are days where it's just not that day. Like, this is not the control. Sometimes we'll have a gremlin, right? So we'll have, we call them gremlins. It's in the prompter, and the prompter will completely skip a story. Like, it won't even show up. But the control room still has the story running. So we're reading the next story, but they're showing the video from the story that the prompter skipped. So it's like there are glitches, and the best part is I think what saves us is that the majority of the people that tune in to Good Morning Mississippi are listening.
100%.
And I've learned that if I don't say, "Oh, we're having some technical difficulties," I don't think many people would notice.
I would agree with that,
because they're ironing clothes, or making breakfast, or making lunch for the kids, or they're putting on makeup. They're just literally just listening to it.
The first thing that I turn on is that in the morning, and then I'm busy doing tasks, making breakfast, whatever.
And until Wesley comes on with the weather art, then you pay attention. Then you tune in.
100%.
My favorite part of the morning is watching Wesley's interpretation of what these wonderful second graders, who are a heck of a artist. They're great artists. They can come up with some things, and watching his, because they don't explain. There's nothing on there that on the back of it they write what's happening. I've
done that before when I was when I was younger. Mike Reeder would be the one reading them. Throwing them up there.
Mike Reeder.
Yeah.
That's a guy right there.
He's a Coast legend.
He's another one. Yeah. He's another one that I grew up watching, and I've seen him now a couple of times, and he hangs out in some random places. Like, he'll hang out in the food court at the mall, or I see him all over the place between he and AJ Jardina.
Okay.
I see them. I've seen Rhonda. I've seen Rhonda almost as many times outside of work now that she's retired than I saw her at work, because I was on a different schedule than her. So she was walking out the door as I was coming in. So I've seen her just as many times in retirement, almost as I did when she was there, because our schedules were so different.
Right. Yeah, I had Doug Walker on here too. So because he was running for alderman and whatnot. Sure. He's got a great commanding voice.
Listen. I told him I was doing a story on something, and we're talking about X amount of $1 billion, and I was like, "Folks, that's billion with a B." Or no, I know. I said, as my friend Doug Walker would say, "Folks, that's billion with a B."
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
His delivery is Doug Walker, WLOX. Who's now. And he's so everyone knows him. He was in radio for like 30 years before he spent 14 or 15 years in television. So he's been doing it for a while, and everyone knows Doug Walker. Everyone knows that name. Everyone trusts that name. And that's part of why it's important that we, especially in the small market in small television. I say small television, I'm not talking about network and local community news. That's why it's so important for us to maintain that level of integrity and neutrality, because you want folks to listen to what you're saying regardless of the story you're talking about. So if you're talking about something that some people would deem as far left, or what some people would deem as far right, or atheist or a Christian, you want to be able to deliver it, and folks are like, oh, I know that I saw him at a Republican rally, and you're telling others, you want to be able to keep that going. And for me, that's the most important part of what I do. I take that seriously, aside from the fact that it's part of my contract. I take it seriously because I want, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about, I want people to know that they can trust what's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, yeah. Local news might be the last sort of bastion of journalistic integrity and maintaining neutrality, delivering objective stories on the heels of the known facts at the time, without any sort of interpretation, allowing people to make their own opinions on it. It
really is. And there's the I forget the phrase, I forget what it's called, but it's like the people in the community who are being like the street journalists who are telling their own stories. Keith Wilson is a good friend of mine, and he has his own company, Streetcar PR, and he goes to he's at more events probably than we are at the station. And I know that he used to work for a newspaper. I want to say it was Biloxi D'Iberville Press. I'm not certain. Don't quote me on that. Well, it's too late. Oh well. So I believe that's who he worked for. I'm not sure, but he has his own thing now. He has his Facebook page, and his hashtag is Your Local News, and he is writing full newspaper quality stories and putting television quality video in, and he's putting them together, and it's all on his own. He's doing his own thing, and he's doing great work. But he's another example of those guys who have that journalistic integrity that are still out there doing it, despite the fact that they're not working for a station or a newspaper or any kind of publication. Yeah, he's out there doing it, and he's doing great work.
How much pressure is there from, say, affiliates to deliver a type of message to the news? Like, because y'all get stories from CBS, ABC, and whatnot, and is there any pressure? And of course, this could be above your level, it could be non-existent. Just kind of curious.
So we get things like you mentioned, we get things from ABC and CBS, and we run them the way they're written. So we'll have a national story in every newscast. There's a national story.
Sure.
And then, but we'll pull their script, we'll pull their copy, and we'll pull their video, and we'll run it just like it's written. So it's not that we're being pressured into, speaking from a certain angle. Yeah. It's however it's written. Gotcha. So it's it's important that everyone that your listeners, your viewers understand that whenever we pull a national story from Danya Bacchus or from Laura Podesta, like all of those national correspondents, they're sending us all of the script, all of the things that the anchor reads to intro the story is sent. Then we get the video, and then the tag, which is kind of like wraps everything up. They send us the tag as well. So everything it's done. It's plug and play. And then behind that, we'll localize it. Here in Mississippi or here on the Gulf Coast, this is what's happening. I see. If we're doing a COVID-19 story last year, it was all about how many cases. And we got to the point where we're like, the news isn't really about the cases anymore. The news is about the vaccination effort. So if we have a milestone case day, then we'll talk about cases. We talked about cases last week, I believe it was because on Monday, we had something like 483 cases, and that's the most we'd had. But it was like, but don't fear, we're combining Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Yeah. So we mentioned that because we knew that number was going to get out there, but we also wanted to make sure that folks knew it wasn't 400 from Sunday to Monday, it was 400 from Saturday to Monday. So when situations like that occur, when there's a big dump and it's been a week and there's a dump of things, we'll bring that up. We'll tell you the case numbers. We'll tell you why. But we try to localize things on the back end of kind of a national story or a national segment. Just because that's it's affecting us regardless of where it's happening. Those things are happening here. The only difference is whenever the George Floyd trial was going on, we are in kind of a bubble, right? So a lot of the protests that were happening here were 100% peaceful protests, and it wasn't happening here like it was happening in other major cities. I think you'll probably find that in a lot of smaller cities, it's the same story. Yeah. In major cities where there is more of a melting pot of people, you were seeing what was happening, unless it was cities where those events took place. Sure. But in major cities, you're seeing larger melting pots. You're seeing larger demonstrations that either are or not peaceful. But here it's hard to localize a story about a riot because we're just not having those here. People that are protesting here are educating themselves. And whether they're watching the news or they're reading the internet or they're listening to a podcast, they're educating themselves so that they understand what the issues are. And for me, that's the best part. Is that I'm going to do my job, but I know that I'm not the only game in town. There's so many other ways to get your news that, we're gonna localize it and we're gonna tell you the facts that are happening here. And hopefully in your mind, that supports what you've already studied, what you've already been looking into. I
see. How much, if there is like a national story, how much planning goes into selecting the person to interview? Like if there's an issue, like say for George Floyd, I imagine you're not going to interview just any random person. You're probably going to take somebody who has a pro-police perspective, anti-police perspective, but also would you view that as far as representing the racial issue that's pretty obvious there?
That's a hard question. And that's an easy question. It's a hard answer. You have a lot of individuals who are very outspoken and a lot of individuals who want their opinions known, but they won't get on camera. To do it. So it's the hardest job for the reporter is to know that you have someone's opinion, but they don't want to put their face to their comments. You get a lot of keyboard warriors. For those of you that are watching, there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, and it's like, and the best part is your name's out there. Like when you're on Facebook, your name is there. We know who you are. We know that you said what you said. We have it right here. We just want you to come and be that character in the story, right? For lack of a better way to put it. There's maybe a dozen stories that we're working right now that we don't have all of those character pieces in play. We can't tell the story yet. And it's not, like you mentioned, for me, it doesn't make sense to get one side of the story unless after that story, one of my fellow reporters has the exact same story, but the other side. So the only way we would do that is if you're going to put those two stories back to back. So we can say, when the anchor's reading, on the flip side of that coin, we have this. And it's like if you don't get them all in the same story, it's fine as long as you're presenting that information. So it's fair. But it's difficult to get some of those key players. There's a handful of people that you always see. Those activists, for any sort of subject matter, there's an activist. And there are some here on the coast that everyone's seen before. They're very active. They're in the community. You know who they are. They know who you are in a lot of cases. And when there's a situation, if I don't want to talk to that person, I can call that person and say, do you have somebody that that's vocal, that doesn't mind talking? And that's how we help each other. Is like if I don't have somebody that I know is willing to talk about a difficult race relations or gender relations or things that are like what we're talking about today in the news cycle. If I don't have somebody that's willing to come out, I've been developing those sources so I can call this person who I know has a plethora of people that he works with or she works with that will say, okay, these two people want to talk. They're active in the community. This is what they believe in. They have differing views, but they're civil. They're willing to talk about it together. So it's good to have those people because I can go, there's a story that we're working right now and we're milling some names of some people that we know are involved, but it's like 500 or 600 names and you're just going through contacting those individuals, and every 20 people you get, one person will say, I'll talk. And then, but they're like, well, I'll talk, but I don't want to be on camera. So unfortunately the news gets a bum rap, right? So for whatever reason, people don't like the news. And I get it. I say for whatever reason because I have to say for whatever reason. I understand the reasons behind it. They don't like the media. Let me just say the media. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. I'm not the media. So, and I understand. But at the end of the day, what I think my most important message is to your viewers and to your listeners and the people that watch us on television is I live here. I'm a Landry. My last name is on the pedestal of that golden fisherman out in front of the Seafood Museum. Like my family was raised in East Biloxi. I went to Sacred Heart. I went to St. Martin. I went to Biloxi High School. I went to Perk. Like this is my community. I moved away for 15 years and traveled the world and wanted to come back here and tell local stories and make my community better. the people in my community the information they need to make better decisions for themselves and for their families. And I'm going to come interview you and you're not going to hear I'm going to make you look like a rock star.
Sure.
I'm not going to change what you said. I'm not going to mix your words around so that the context is wrong.
Right.
But I'm also not going to make you look silly because then you're never going to talk to me again. So people that I've interviewed, folks get so nervous, but I'm like, it just ends up being a conversation like this. I'm like, I'm not a real journalist.
I literally feel like you're talking to any of the people that have come on my podcast here, because this is the exact same conversation I have. Like, look, I'm here to make you look amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I'm here to get your story. You would have this conversation with me. I talked with Melanie Milburn for like an hour off camera before the podcast, and because she was a bit nervous, and so I said, do you feel nervous with this conversation? She's like, no. And I was like, okay, imagine the camera's there. That's it. It's gonna be the same thing, but there's
your camera's like, it's much smaller than the ones we have in the studio. So it's like, I don't even see it there. In the studio, there's like, I look in camera 3, Meggan and I both look in camera 4, she looks in camera 5, but sometimes she and Wesley and I look in camera 5, and they're just like huge red lights and teleprompters and lenses, and it's like they're like this size, you can't miss them. And this one, it's like I see the lights and don't even realize it's there.
Well, perfect.
But 3 years ago when I auditioned for this gig, I was terrified.
Okay.
I auditioned with Meggan, and I'm a performer, so being on stage in front of thousands of people is easy. But being on stage in front of more than thousands of people through that little lens was, I don't know what it was. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I want to see that video again because they recorded that audition. I haven't seen it since I auditioned. And
that'd be good social media fodder.
I can't imagine how entertaining that must be to watch now.
Well, so what, like, I read your LinkedIn, and I saw the different places that you've worked, and obviously you've been involved in theater and whatnot. So let's start there. Talk about your experience in performing, as you said.
So I grew up doing community theater here at Biloxi. Well, Biloxi Little Theater was the first place I ever did a show. My first show ever. I went.
What'd you do?
It was called Magical Musical Moments.
Okay.
And God rest her soul, Lee Green Pope was the director. She just passed probably within the last week.
Oh, wow.
I want to say she was in her 90s, but she's responsible. The gentleman that's in charge of the Wings program, the Lynn Meadows program Wings in Gulfport, he was one of her students. I grew up with a host of people who are either in the business, they're still performing, they're teaching other performers, they're still heavily involved in the arts in some form or fashion.
Sure.
I did shows there. I did shows at Gulfport Little Theater. I worked with K&S, which is a big company before Katrina that performed mainly specifically at the Sanger Theater. So I grew up doing that. I cut my professional teeth in the casinos here, working for Greg Thompson Productions, all of those casino review shows. I did a handful of those here. I was doing a show there that a producer from New Zealand saw.
Go on.
And they liked it. And they decided to buy the rights to the show. Only Greg Thompson had like 2 or 3 casts performing that show in the US. And so he got to go see all the casts, and he liked our little cast at the Gulfport Grand Casino. And so we ended up getting to tour New Zealand for, I think it was like 3 months.
That's amazing.
And it was like 13 cities in 3 months. And it was, they billed us direct from Broadway. And it was like the shows were sold out before we even arrived. Like they were sold out, and we're playing to houses with double balconies. And I mean, it was, I was bitten. I was like, I'm ready to take this to the next level. So I started working for Stiletto Entertainment. And they have 2 branches. They have like the artist management branch and then the cruise ship entertainment branch. The artist management, they were representing their biggest clients, Barry Manilow.
Oh.
Their name was Lola. Yeah. So Barry Manilow's there. The Jordan Sparks. So there was one of their vocal directors was one of the vocal coaches in American Idol. So they got a handful of American Idols that will come through that either were like in the top 10 and they would represent them moving through. So I got bitten by that professional because I'd never done anything professional, and finally getting that experience was so different for me because it's just different. It's like when you go and watch a JUCO college football game and you watch an SEC college football game. You're like, they're different people.
Yeah.
Like there was a quarterback from LSU that transferred to Perk when my brother was playing, and his number was 1, and I don't remember his name now to save my life, but he transferred from LSU to Perk. And he got to Perk and he was like 6'3" or 6'4", was like 245 pounds, and was like, he walked in looking like an SEC athlete. And it was just, they're just, those athletes, they're different.
There's levels to it.
Absolutely.
There's certainly levels, yeah.
And that's kind of what it felt like doing doing it professionally. And I went from there and I worked for Holland America, and I worked for All Caribbean. I auditioned for Disney. I started working for Disney Creative. I got to do Finding Nemo, the musical, at the Animal Kingdom. And I did the Voices of Liberty at Epcot. I had a blast. And I just got to the point where I was 5 days a week. I was in the gym twice a day, and I was unfair, the shape that I had to be in, because at any given point, the producer can say, oh, well, we want you to take your shirt off for this number. I'm like,
right.
You can't be in your head about what you look like. You just have to take your shirt off and sing a song. And so I'm about 40 pounds heavier now than I was then. Okay. And I just got tired of it. And I was on a cruise ship and I was like 35. I'm not 35 anymore. I was about 35 and I was, right. I was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I could hear some dancers in the hallway that had been drinking, and they were up all night. They're having a good hallway party.
Yeah.
And I was about to call security, and I was like, I'm that guy. I'm that old singer at the end of the hallway that I didn't like when I was 21 and I was doing this. And our old 30-year-old singer was calling security because he had to sleep because he had a show. And I was like, I have turned into that guy.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave it here. It's been a good run. And I came.
What a moment!
I came back. Those are the moments that you either define the moment or the moment defines you.
Right.
The moment defined me, and I was like, it's that time. And that transition, though, I'll be honest with you, is difficult, because when you come back home, you want to continue performing to the level that you're familiar with, and it doesn't happen the same way, because now you come home and you're doing community theater. Don't get me wrong, I'm opening a show this weekend and I love everything about it, but you have to remember, you have to take a second to put yourself in that space. You're dealing with people now that have 9-to-5 jobs, and they're just doing this extra.
Sure.
So when somebody walks into rehearsal 5 minutes late, as a director, I'm losing my mind, because if you're on time, you're late. But I mean, they came from work and they have 2 kids, and they had to run home and feed the kids. And then the husband or the wife had a fit about something, or I had to ask them questions that turned into something else. And now I'm 10 minutes late. So, but in the professional world, there's no time for that. Like, you have a job, and this is what you're paid. If you cash your check, then we expect you to be here. And so that transition is difficult, because you want to be to that, you want to stay on that level, but it's impossible, because when you're on that level, that's all you're doing. You're getting paid to do just that. So you have no excuse. You're on time. You know your material. You're ready to perform at any given time at 110%.
Yeah.
So for me, getting back to a place where I was a little more comfortable with that and understanding that was difficult. But I did some shows. I have a quick story. We were with the Voices of Liberty, and there was a guy that was there. He was a Purple Heart recipient. One of the coolest moments of my performance career, and he wanted to hear the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and was originally written as a prayer, or it's a prayer that was originally written to music, I believe. Anyway, mine eyes have seen the coming. You know that song.
Yeah.
So. He's sitting in a wheelchair. He's got his family there, and we start singing this song. And in the Voices of Liberty, if you've ever seen them, there are times where there's a solo happening, and we call them ooh-pads, right? So there's 7 or 8 people singing oohs in 4-part harmony, and it's the dynamics are swishing through the room, because that rotunda is built for the acoustics of an acapella group. And you have one guy singing a solo, and it's there's a whole accompanied arrangement happening behind that soloist, and it's the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of vocally. They're musicians, right? They're not singers. They're musicians. And this guy's in his wheelchair, and he's at the end of it, he stands up and he's saluting us. And we're just trying not to cry, because it's his entourage, right? It's we had just him and his family, and the people, it was not a lot, 20, 30 people with him. But this guy's on oxygen. He's in his wheelchair. I believe he's World War II Purple Heart. I believe it was World War II. And he's standing, pushes himself up in his chair and salutes the group as we're singing this song. Cause it's at the end of it, it just starts building and building and building. And you can't help but get overcome with emotion, because that's how the song's written. And that moment is one of those moments that will live on for the rest of my life. And in the acapella group I'm in now, I want that, but I know that everybody that's in that group has a 9-to-5 job, and again, they're not doing that full time. But it's like we can get to that stage. It's just gonna, when that's not the only thing you're doing, it just takes you a little longer to get there. But that moment, it's funny how this was his favorite song, and the way that song was just orchestrated, it puts you in a place, and he felt like saluting, and it was an awesome moment.
Yeah, having served in the military, I can appreciate some of that, and certainly, when I hear you tell that story and hear how he responded, obviously it's an emotional situation, and indeed an emotional song. But as you said, it's a prayer. So what you were doing was you were praying for him, know. And so it's a really special thing.
It was, again, I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that, not everybody in the performance world gets those. They get to have those little nuggets, and I'm glad it happened. It was right at the end of my time with the Voices of Liberty, right before I went back and worked for Royal Caribbean. But it was spectacular.
Well, that's a great salutation there.
Yeah.
So, I had being in the military and I flew around the way. Got a lot of similarities here. I left for like 12 years, and then in those 12 years, I went to 50 different countries. So because of the military, there was one time where I had kind of an emotional impact for a mission, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I got alerted to. This is when I was a flying mechanic on C-17s. I got alerted, told I had to be ready in like 12 hours to take a real world aeromedical evac mission, right? I was like, cool, where? They said Misawa, southern Japan. There's a base there, but there's no conflict there. There's no war there. There's no battle, So I'm going over the news trying to find something. Nothing's going on, right? So we ended up going, doing an aerial refuel to land in Fukuokura, I think, which is on the mainland in Japan. And then we landed in Misawa. And all we had to do was take this patient from Misawa to Yokota where they could get treatment. And we didn't know what the injuries were. That was our mission. And when we landed, the rear doors open up, and we have a full aeromedical suite. There's doctors, nurses. We have litters set up, oxygen's on the plane for whoever the patient or patients are. And the people that come up was a man holding his daughter that had her hands wrapped up, and their mom holding their son, and the entire mission wasn't for somebody that was hurt in conflict, but it was for a service member, his kid, just a simple mistake. My basketball coach in high school, this happened to his sons, Coach Hubbard, but he opened the oven, or somebody opened the oven, turned their head around, and the child put their hands on. Yeah, that's all it was. But for me, it was one of those things where there was no shortage. There was nothing going to stop this mission from happening. And that's no small muscle movement to do. It's a, 300,000 pound aircraft, 250,000 pounds of fuel, another aerial refueler to make it happen, a crew of like 18 people, all to get this one child to a burn center, and for me, it's easy to be cynical about your job, about your workplace. And in the military, it's very easy to be cynical because often you're viewed as like just kind of a number, right? Or at least that's the perception you often have. But in that case, like, you weren't, and not just you, but your family, Yeah. So it was a really great kind of sobering moment for me.
You don't think about things like that in like the world's most powerful military, and its mission to help a child that burned their hands.
Yeah.
You don't. Those missions they probably happen more frequently than you would think.
Yeah.
And you don't, that's not, those
I've
are
done a couple of those actually since then.
Those are the moments that you just, when I think, my family's Air Force, my brother is Marines, and you think, you don't think about that. You just think about the Marines there to protect and defend. Well, protecting and defending has a lot of definition.
Sure. And
you don't, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a great thing. But back to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in theater, you went to New Zealand, you're part of this really high level theater team, right? Is there a name for like a group there? I'm not in that industry, so I don't.
A group for what?
Well, you're part of this theater group.
I'm just part of. I'm a performer. I'm
okay,
a thespian.
A thespian.
Yeah. So we're
that'll work.
That group that when they went to New Zealand was Greg Thompson Productions was a production company, and it was a cast here. It was a couple of individuals that got plugged in that for some individuals that didn't go, but it was. So when I worked for Royal Caribbean, we were called the Royal Caribbean Singers and Dancers.
Nice.
Yeah. When I worked for Greg Thompson, the dancers were called the Mist and Get Dancers, unless you were choreographed by someone else. And then I worked for him in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. They were the Sheila Keating Dancers. So that was the first. I thought they were all Mist and Get Dancers. I didn't know it was just based on the choreographer. So, there's not necessarily like there are theaters that have acting troupes that have like repertory companies.
Sure.
And they have names, but I'm not part of any of those. I'm a member of the Actors Equity Association, but that's on hold because I'm not doing any union work here.
Okay.
So I've frozen that account. While it's frozen, I can do any work that I want. I can do non-union, non-paid things, but if my account's active, I can only do union work.
Interesting.
And that doesn't exist here. I mean, there's a union house in Jackson and north of here, but there's not a union house here or any union contracts here.
Gotcha. So what got you to WLOX?
I'm singing in the Coast Big Band. It's a group, myself and David Delk and Karen Abernathy, Jonathan Brannon, Jeanette Pilon. We're all singers with the Coast Big Band. The Big Band's comprised of pretty fantastic musicians, a lot of retired band directors, some current band directors still. And Jonathan Brannon was there for 4 or 5 years, and he was leaving. He was taking another opportunity, and he was like, this position's available. Let me backtrack a little bit. I was in Jackson one morning. I'd moved to Jackson from here. I was the hotel manager of the Hard Rock because I went into hospitality for a little while after I got off of ships or after I got out of performing. And I was sitting in my apartment in Jackson. Had just opened this brand new $80 million hotel in Jackson, the Westin. It's right by the federal courthouse. And I was the director of hotel ops or front office director. And I'm sitting there one morning, just watching Good Morning America. And I was like, man, if Michael Strahan can do this, I can do this. And it was just it was a thought. Like Michael Strahan is, I don't mean to like sell him short. I don't mean to say that he's not any good at what he does. I mean to say that he's a football player.
Right.
But again, captain of a fantastic defense, and I believe he has 2 Super Bowl rings.
I think so. Yeah.
And so. If he's not already, he's a Hall of Famer. He very well may be a Hall of Famer already. I'm not certain.
I'm not sure.
But he's been hit in the head a few times. Like I'm sure he's had a concussion or 2. And I'm like, if he can do this, I can do this. And I just kind of like put it in the universe. Like I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know where I'm going to do this, but I got to do this. I feel like I don't feel like I missed my calling because I feel like what I did, I was supposed to be doing, but I feel like this is the next stage of my life. This was in 2017. And then I finished that gig there. I'd only signed a year contract. I moved back down to the coast. So I'm singing with the Coast Big Band and I'm home for a year and a half. I'm working at one of the casinos here. And Jonathan Brannon leaves and he's like, dude, told me in a big band where he's like, I'm leaving WLOX. And I was like, you're what? And he said, yeah, I'm leaving WLOX. And he mentioned, he's like, so would you be interested in that position? Cause I know they're gonna be looking for somebody. And I was like, what? And I was like, I don't know. And I thought about it for like 2 weeks. I just really mulled and I just felt a sense of like, I felt called to do. I felt like this was supposed to be a step I needed to take.
Yeah.
I didn't know why without any real major experience since high school. And he was like, yeah, I'll let the news director know. And, so he let me know. He called me in. I talked to him. He wanted me to do a mock story. It was a story on a show that I was doing at the time, which was Scrooge the Musical at the Mary C in Ocean Springs. I did the story. He brought me in for like a screen test, which is the one they recorded. I was there. I did it with Meggan.
Okay.
And I grew up with Meggan, right? So we grew up doing theater together as kids. So I've known her almost all of our adult lives, but even into like high school. And I was like, this is never going to happen. And they called me and they offered me this gig, and I was like, this doesn't happen. And he was like, well, I mean, I watched your story. It could have aired the way it was. There's some fine tuning we need to do and some writing things. And I'll tell you, once I got involved and I started writing things other than theater shows or theater stories, the writing is very different. With a degree in criminal justice, it's like I have like police speak down. Yeah. And when you read police reports, the subject crossed the line at A1532 out. It's very absolutely
very
black and white
voice.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so but I would walk around the station and I'll be speaking different accents. Every time I go somewhere, I'm speaking with a different accent. And she's like, I need one of my managers, Natalie, she would like, I need you to like find a middle spot between the police speak and these like goofy accents that you run around here. I need you to find somewhere in the middle and write your news there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, she goes, because people that you want them to tune in. You want them to watch, you need to grab their attention, and it's WLOX News Now, right? So tell us what's happening right now, then back up and tell us how we got there. And so that writing news copy for me was a huge learning curve. And there was a day where it clicked. And then you plateau, and you're like, and find something else. And then I joined this Facebook page called Storytellers, and it's all people from all over the nation who are reporters. And I started watching people's stories from other cities and other states. And I really started to like, I think you have to have a station email address for them to accept you. So I started to like really, Bill Wood is like a 20-time Emmy winner from WGNO right down the road in New Orleans. And he's a brilliant storyteller. He's got a guy that edits his video. He's got a photographer that shoots his stuff, and he's got a team. So his Emmys are part of a team effort, and he says that he's not shy about that. But that man's work, he does some spectacular. The stories, he's their features reporter. And if you know what a feature is not hard news. It's a story about a guy who's got every New Orleans Saints player's autograph tattooed on his body. We would call
that's a thing.
That's the story he did, yeah. And then there was he works at an auto part shop somewhere in New Orleans, and every autograph he's ever gotten, he's had tattooed to his body, and he's got like 70 or 80 tattoos, and they're all autographs from New Orleans Saints players. And it was like, so these are, and that's not a hard news story. No. That's not somebody getting hit by a car or an accident on I-10. It's not anything that's breaking news that's going to monopolize the first 5 minutes of the show, or fluff pieces. But they're so good, and he's got 20 Emmys for writing features, but they're so good. So it was getting involved in that page and really understanding other ideas and how to approach and how to use the video to tell your story, like to literally write around the video that you shoot. There was a huge, I'm literally repeating the things that Brad has said to me countless times. And I've and he probably will still be saying these things to me now. But it was a learning curve. It was difficult at first. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I didn't know if I thought I was going to just give up before it got to that point. But then it just became like, oh no, you willed this. You sat on the couch one day and said, if he can do it, I can do it. And now you're going to do it, whether you like it or not. And then Rhonda announced her retirement. I was like, the morning show. I've always, like, the morning show for me is, my hair's not on my head. It's on my face. and I'm getting over a hoarse voice early in the week. So my voice is a little deeper than it usually is, but I don't have your standard news voice. Like I'm not a Walter Cronkite or even a Jeff Lawson, who was here for years. I grew up watching as well. Yeah. I'm just kind of quirky and I'm energetic and I'm silly and I'm a morning show guy.
And no offense to everybody else, but you're the best dressed guy there.
I will take that. But that's part of it. Like that's, for me, that's kind of what, I like to be dressed nice, and I feel like that I want people to tune in to WLOX's Good Morning Mississippi because they know I'm going to read the news. They know what we're going to talk about. They just don't know quite how I'm going to do it. Like that's what I told Brad whenever I said I want them to tune in, not because they know I'm going to read it. They just want, it's like, okay, let's see, how's he going to say it today?
Yeah.
And I want it. I feel like that's what a morning show should be. Sure. It should be high energy. It's what you choose to wake up to. It's what sets the tone for your day. And knowing that I get like a little piece of helping you get out the door and start your day and be a productive South Mississippian. that's a good feeling. That's an honor. And so it became one of those things where I had the opportunity for that. I told Brad I wanted it. Then it became, okay, we're going to put you on the desk and you're going to anchor. And so then it was just like, and now I'm opening myself up to a whole nother like section of criticisms that I never even thought of prior. And even down to somebody like not liking somebody literally emailed the station, didn't like my flower. I was like, okay, I'll just wear it on Fridays. Flower Friday.
Noted. So I'm reminded by an article I read recently about home design and white torture. And this isn't a race thing. It has to do with a psychological torture technique called white torture. And it's where you're put into a room. Guards outside the room will walk around with like padded shoes so they can't make any sound. And it's a way of inducing sensory deprivation, right? Lights in the room are positioned to where they can't create shadows. So there's no shadows in the room. The room's completely white. It's completely bland. Right. Sounds weird, right?
I'm starting to have some anxiety.
Hold on. But the thing is, what's popular in home design right now is that it's everything's very white, lack of color, and then you add a little bit of color accent, like some sort of earthy thing, right? But in the article, it talked about how important color is, in our lives, and when I see you in the morning with your quirky nature, right, with how color coordinated you are, and you're not afraid of color, isn't that what you're trying to do? Because the start of the day is emergence from the darkness into the light, into the magnitude of colors that exist in the world. So I think the way you approach that, even in the way you dress, I think benefits people in the morning. I really do.
That must be subliminal, because I hadn't thought about that. And now that you bring it up, it's like, well, that kind of makes sense. I'm not afraid of color. Like for me, that's when I was on tour and I was performing on ships, I would have to have my own show ready. So I had suits all the time. I had to, and when you're on stage performing in front of an orchestra, in front of an audience, you have to be clean. You have to be presentable. You have to be really like the most best dressed person in the room. And so that's always been a thing. But I don't know. It's like I have a black suit. I have a gray suit. I wear them, but I'll wear them with a colored shirt and a different colored tie and a weird pocket square.
Right.
I love, I'm not a fashion guru. I'll test some patterns. I'll mix some patterns. I'll woefully mix some patterns just because I'll see somebody on TV that'll have on like a pinstripe suit and a plaid shirt and a paisley tie and a polka dot pocket square. And I'm like, I got that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it. And Brad pointed it out where I was like, what were you, talk to me. What was
why are you the way you are today?
Were you awake this morning when you got dressed? Is that like, what happened? What question? Just tell me something. What is, give me this. What is it? What was going on there?
Yeah.
And I was like, I won't let it happen again. But and you know what? I really appreciate the fact that he's letting me do that, because there's a we're in the South. We're not the fashion mecca of the United States. We're kind of a conservative. Again, I'm not being political there. We're kind of a conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, Biloxi specifically, like the Gulf Coast, is kind of different from a lot of other places in the state, because there's a lot of people coming from out of town here. So there's more influence here, but those tourists aren't watching the news. I mean, they might be, but for the most part, they're playing golf at that. They're getting ready to go play golf, or they're doing tourist things. They're not, and tourists are, when I'm on vacation, the last thing I'm looking at is the news. I mean, I don't really watch the news anymore now that I do it for a living. I watch it sometimes, but it's like all I see. It's right. It's a lot. But I really appreciate the fact that he lets me do that. Because, for example, there are some stations that won't let you wear anything on your lapel unless it's the number. Like ours would be 13. Like our station, like our numbers, our WLOX pen, our call signs, and he's letting me, find that and with finding my voice, he's letting me enjoy my space. And he's never said anything to me. He's completely comfortable with the fact that I like to wear what I like to wear, and he's fine with that. And I feel like that's part of who I am. It's part of what I do. And you're right. Maybe subliminally for me, it is the fact that I just like it. For me, it's part of the job that I have, right? Is that it's the first thing you see, the first thing you hear. Even if you're not saying it, it's kind of the first thing you hear. But I'm going to say something. I'm going to miss a word. You're going to look back and see if you can see my face and if I'm laughing, because words are hard. Words are just as hard as numbers. I don't know if you've ever heard anybody say that. Meggan and I, if you're watching, Meggan, hi, I love you. Words are hard. And Meggan will tell you that people's names are hard because I have to go online and like listen for pronunciations for names, and I don't want to be an Adele Dazeem. I don't want somebody to say my name wrong. Did you get that, Adele?
No.
John Travolta was introducing Idina Menzel. I think it was on the Academy Awards, and he's like, the incomparable Adele Dazeem. And that's not her name. It's not even close to her name. Her name is Idina Menzel.
It's like the original Steve Harvey moment.
Exactly. And it might have even been before Steve Harvey. Yeah. But I don't want to mess up anyone's name. Like, it's your name. It's you gave us a chance to tell your story. I want to get your name right. But I feel like, being able to have the opportunity to like express myself through the way I dress, I just am really happy that in our little conservative town of Biloxi that they let me do it. And I feel like for the most part, folks enjoy it. Yeah. Well,
I mean, we are kind of, old school, or maybe have some legacy values and whatnot within the area. But, the coast is certainly not void of color. Even the morning drive coming in over the water when, the sun's rising in the east. I mean, and there's an array of different tints and shades of colors, and the blues and aquamarines that this place gives us. It's just, it's incredible.
Well, and even the people.
Yeah.
Like, it was not as diverse when I was a child. When I was at Sacred Heart Elementary School, that's in D'Iberville. It's right on the D'Iberville St. Martin line. And even when I went to St. Martin, it was very similar. It was not as diverse. Now, there are so many people from so many walks of life, from so many ethnicities and backgrounds. And I don't know if I ever thought that would be the case when I was younger. I just thought it was always going to be a place where I could ride a tractor to the gas station. Because when I was a kid, that's what you just could do that. And it's leaps and bounds. When I come over that ocean, and now let's talk about the Ocean Springs Bridge for a minute. Remember whenever you used to ride on it, it would just be like it was like riding a horse. Now that new bridge, when you come over that bridge and you can see, like, I look at all of the casinos that are lit up, and it's like, when I was a kid, I never even imagined anything like that being something that could happen. I hadn't really even seen anything like that because I didn't go to Gulf Shores. I played sports when I was a kid, so I stayed home and I was playing sports in the summer. And so if I traveled, it was on a rare occasion. I don't even know as a child if I went to New Orleans. And it was like, I didn't see that. So you see it on TV, but it's like, oh, it's on TV. It's the big city. It's like, it's in New York. But I never imagined anything like that here. And then when I come over that, and like you said with the colors, like, it's the Grand. It's always going to be the Grand. What is it? Harrah's. Harrah's is like purple and blue, and the Hard Rocks colors, and the bow will always be that golden bow. But the bow is always going to be the bow. It's always going to look like that.
Yeah.
But it's like seeing those things. It's just like it gives me, like, I know from whence we came. Right, like, I know where we were when I was a kid, and it was like, be sure you're in the house when the street light comes on. Like, that's how it was when we were kids, and it's like, it's amazing to see where we are now. And it's just like, I can't even imagine what it's going to be in another 30 years. Because just in the last casinos 29 years ago,
they couldn't be on land.
Yeah. Well, but that's when they started. It was 29 years ago. And it's like, okay, well, in 29 years, where are we going to be? What's it going to look like? Like, I'm mesmerized still today, having had it here for this long. When I go over the bridge and it's like the sun's kind of going down, and you can see the same thing when it sets that you see kind of when it comes up, but you see the skyline, and there is a skyline.
There is,
and it's not the Buena Vista Hotel and the Windjammer. It's like, it's the actual, like, it's a skyline, and I just wonder what it's going to be like in 30 years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there from what it looks like in East Biloxi, they're pumping a lot of money into investing in that area, and I've heard a couple ideas about what they're going to do. But I would kind of make the case that it's gone down in East Biloxi in terms of like the skyline, because we used to have the Lady Luck. The Grand Casino used to cross Highway 90. It had this huge kind of light up sign there that had a pot of gold pouring out, and then also the Grand Theater was beautiful right there next to it.
We had the Casino Magic.
Had the Casino Magic.
Like the magic hat with the
the
top hat.
Yeah, but of course the Golden Nugget was the Isle of Capri, and go down a little farther across from the boat, you had the Bombay Bicycle Club.
Oh, the Bombay
There
Bicycle.
you go.
Yeah. They had my favorite sandwich there was the Monte Cristo.
Okay. I've had that one. Yeah. That was a good one.
So good.
That was a good one. And then go farther, you had Treasure Bay. You had this Spanish Mission style casino, which was so much fun.
That was like the Disney themed, the pirate ship, and it had the castle. It was just like, and that stuff never came back.
I'll tell you what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the Broadwater investment. I mean, that's supposed to go from the old property where the President Casino was all the way back. I think restoring the golf course, I think, is part of that plan too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. That's one of those things where it's like they're investing. That's $1 billion with a B.
With a B, yeah. Right.
As my friend Doug Walker would say, that's $1 billion with a B, folks. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for a performance center, which of course begs the question: is Biloxi able to sustain that?
That's the thing. You're Universal Music. Mm-hmm. So do you have people underneath your umbrella contracted to perform at your locations? For me, that's the only thing I think of is can Biloxi sustain something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if
it doesn't sound like a 5-star. I don't think of Biloxi as the place where Post Malone would come to and say, okay, I've got to make sure I hit Biloxi on this tour. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
unless he's underneath that Universal Music umbrella.
And if that's the thing,
contractually, he has to perform in 15 of their venues a year.
Is that how things are done?
Know.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
To me, that's what makes sense. We haven't spoken to, we've tried to get those folks on the phone a couple times, and we've gotten them on the phone. I don't know if that's how that's going to work. It's going to be, I worry what it's going to do to Edgewater Mall, because there's going to be a huge retail space there. That's going to be brand new retail that we don't see here. Is it going to be priced for the market? I mean, if you put there's not a Tiffany and Company here. Is that because folks wouldn't buy Tiffany and Company here?
Yeah.
Is there going to be one there? Is there going to be a Marc Jacobs? Is there going to be a Toomey Luggage? Things that you see in really upscale malls in larger cities. Orlando, the mall at Millennia it's a mall that's split in two. You go right and it's got your Old Navies and your Gaps and your Bath and Body Works. And you go left and it's got your Toomeys, and it's got your Tiffany and Companies, and it's got your Marc Jacobs, and it's got everything. It's got your Louis Vuitton, these individual stores. It's two very different spaces, but it sustains that. It's Orlando.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I'm excited about that space, because there's nothing like it out here. I'd like him to see it put an amphitheater in East Biloxi. I was in Jackson when the one opened in Brannon, and that amphitheater, it's like the one at the wharf. And it's beautiful. And I feel like if you have a 13 or 15 or 18 or even 2,000 seat amphitheater out there, we could sustain something like that, I feel like, because you get folks that are performing in New Orleans, and then they're going to be performing in Tallahassee in 5 days. It doesn't take 5 days to get there.
No.
But if you got this really cool amphitheater on the Green Lawn, it doesn't have to be the Green Lawn, but over there where Tullis Manor used to be, somewhere in East Biloxi, well, we're going to stop there. We may as well just sell a couple thousand tickets here and just do a little overnight show here on our way there. That makes sense.
That does, yeah.
It's what I would like to see happen to the Sanger.
But then would that displace or take business away? Because to some degree, each performance is zero sum, right? So if that Broadwater property takes that event, well, the Coliseum doesn't get it. Now the local area benefits, but now the Coliseum doesn't get that revenue, and so it's at the expense of what? This Coliseum has been around for so long.
Yeah,
that's had so many failed sports teams in it.
Yeah, herein lies the problem. You have a 10, 12,000 seat space that that the Harrison County Board of Supervisors works diligently with, and now you got somebody over here asking to build a theater, and they want some throwbacks from the Harrison County Board of Supervisors and the state. And you're like, I want it to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath.
That's how I felt about the Shuckers, honestly, about them coming to town. It's like, I want it. I want it for a lot of reasons. I just don't know if now's the right time. But I love going to those games. Those games are a lot of fun.
I have the national anthem to sing on the 23rd.
Do you?
So if you're going to the game on the 23rd, I'll sing the national anthem there. Need to put a net where?
A what?
And you said they need to put a net up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the like 6 times I've been there, somebody on the first and third base line has been hit by a ball.
Oh, yes. You know, we were in the third base line the last time I was there just a week or so ago.
Yeah. Anybody get hit? Lucky.
We were watching. We had gloves. Yeah, okay. We were ready. We were ready. If you're sitting on the third base line of those games, you don't go to drink because you don't. You're having one or two.
Yeah.
It's not one of those games where you're like, we're gonna just have a good time. No, because you need reflexes to work.
Also like we were talking earlier about how there's different levels to athletes. I feel like no problem if I'm at a high school game and a ball comes off the bat, but the first and third base line, I got it. I don't know about these minor league players. I don't know how fast that ball comes off, you know?
I mean, the game I was at, I forget who they were playing. It was just recently too. But this guy's throwing like 95, 96 mile an hour fastballs. I mean, I remember Nolan Ryan he was throwing 100 mile an hour as well, but that's only 5 or 6 miles per hour away from Nolan Ryan.
Yeah. I don't know what the pain difference is between a 95 versus a 100 mile an hour fastball. Probably not much. But
you saw the guy that played, was it for the Mets? The guy hit in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, I guarantee you, if it was 95 or 100, he'd had the same reaction.
Yeah,
it'd been the same thing.
100%.
Did you see Javi Baez? Did you see that video? We showed it this morning on Good Morning Mississippi. Javi Baez hit the ball to, I believe it was I want to say he hit it to the first baseman. And he like got halfway there and realized he was about to get out. So he like ran back to home. But in the process of him running back to home, the guy on third ran to home. So they threw the ball to the catcher, but the guy sliding into home was safe and there was nobody on first. So Javi ran back to first and made it. Yeah. And then they threw the ball to whoever was covering first and he missed it. So he got to go to second. This is all with 2 outs.
I did see this.
Then Javi ended up scoring on a base hit on the next batter. And it was already 2 outs. Like it could have been 3 outs. If they just got him out at home at first base, they wouldn't have scored those other 2 runs.
That's hilarious.
2 runs. Leave it to that guy, man. Javi Baez. That's my girlfriend's. I think she said it's her favorite. I don't know. Maybe it's her favorite.
Who's your baseball team?
The Braves. Let me be honest with you though. I lost some love. I haven't regained my childhood love for baseball because I'm a little upset that they haven't given the hit record to Pete Rose.
Okay.
You got guys who have records in the book who have used performance enhancing drugs. They got home run records and they got a little asterisk by their name. They get to go in the book. What are you going to give this guy? He didn't take anything to help himself play the game better.
No.
He didn't take anything to help himself get a home run record or a stolen base record. He just bet on another team.
Well, here's the thing, and I've had this conversation with people on the show before, but the worst villain in America is somebody who cheats at sports, right? There's no worse villain, right?
You're not wrong.
So, and especially baseball. I mean, that's America's game. Granted, I'm kind of in your camp. Like, did it actually affect anything? Could he actually play that game, and play it objectively and still bet on the other team? I mean, because he is just a pitcher. I mean, pitchers aren't really known to score runs. You know what I mean? So, like, in order for his team to win, they would have to score runs. I mean, objectively, if you have a terribly hitting team, then yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But it's just the perception of it, I don't know. I assume that's why. why he's not in there. But
it's hard for me. It's so the whole time I want to be a huge fan of baseball. I haven't seen a baseball game live in it's been years. We used to go every year when I was a kid because my dad works for Sparklight.
Okay.
And but before it was Sparklight, it was Cable One. Before that, it was TCI. So it was Turner Communications.
Okay.
So we got tickets to the Braves games because it was Ted Turner. And so we would go like every 4th of July, we would go for the 4th of July series. And we'd spend like the weekend in Atlanta. And it was Braves. The Braves they're the closest team. They were always my team.
Yeah, most people are Braves fans.
I mean, it's like, I've always been a Braves fan. So, and anybody that plays the Yankees. It doesn't matter who it is.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if they just beat the Braves. If they're playing the Yankees, I'm cheering for them. But it's like anybody that plays for the Patriots. It's like the Patriots are the Yankees of the NFL. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's like they that's who they are.
Yeah.
I guess in a kind of a way, the salary cap changes all of that. But like the Cowboys are kind of that too. Like when you got owners that are just like Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft, they're just like, whatever it costs, we'll just pay it. Salary cap changes that for the NFL.
Yeah.
But it's like the Yankees are good and they have all the money in the world. And the Patriots were good and had all the money in the world. The Cowboys just had all the money in the world. Yeah. They were really good for a long time. There were years and years they were fantastic. I mean, back in the day when you couldn't stop them. Yeah. But they haven't come back around to that yet. But it's like now it's the Buccaneers. I'm a Saints fan.
Yeah. They should trade for Aaron Rodgers.
Did you hear that Tom Brady wanted to go to the Saints last year?
Really?
Because that's who he was trying to call first.
Yeah.
And he was going to wait and see, what Drew said. And if Drew was leaving, he wanted to go there.
Interesting.
Could you imagine?
That would be hilarious.
Grandpa would have been throwing for us. I only hate him because I hate him. He's
Tom Brady is somebody who he's going to keep a lot of great quarterbacks from, having the careers they could have had,
because he's not done.
I know.
And he could do it again next year.
Yeah. And he probably will.
I mean, and the part was he didn't have major weapons around him. When you have somebody on the field like Tom Brady, it raises the excitement level of the guys on the field, on offense and defense and special teams. Like you're like, we got this guy on the field. Like this guy gives us a chance to not just win but win the Super Bowl. So like everything just raises. Even the fans, like it all just goes up.
I would also say that. So I don't watch. I don't really follow baseball, honestly. I pull for my family's team, so the Phillies, because my family's originally from Philadelphia. But the thing about like Tiger Woods, right? Tiger Woods in golf. I think it was the 2010 Open where he like severed his ACL. He played at Torrey Pines, and going into that, ESPN did this special where some mathematicians and statisticians had gotten together and observed players that played in tournaments, like all the data, their shots, their greens regulation, putts, all that, and they found that just by Tiger being in the field, the majority of golfers played worse. So he had by walking on the course, being on the course, he was that dominant. His reputation preceded him that much that he had a mathematical advantage just by being there over the entire field. So there might be some of that with Tom Brady too.
It's got to be.
Yeah, or like a dominant receiver, like somebody guarding DK Metcalf. Like you've got to know, like, man, I'm going to get work today,
You're like, I didn't come here to work today, but now I got this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I worked when I lived in Atlanta, I had a friend of mine I worked with when I was performing who worked for kind of a subcontract marketing company. And the Falcons hired this company to provide performers, if you will, to be like hype squad members. And it was Tony Gonzalez's last year. And so I joined that team. My dad doesn't like to talk about it. He calls it the dark year because his son was on the field cheering for the Falcons. They didn't win a single home game, Dad. Remember what we talked about? I was like the New Orleans voodoo on the field. But I had to wear like full Falcons clothes, and whenever they scored a touchdown, I ran on the field to the 20-yard line and waved this flag around that said, "Rise up." It burned my hands when I held it.
That's a pretty rad opportunity, though.
Yeah, but again, I got to be on the field for an NFL game. Yeah. And in the old Georgia Dome, there was the home team locker room, the visitors locker room, and it was broken down to A, B, C, D. And the visitors, they just used A, B, and C. So we used D. But there was a door that they would open that joined. There's a door in the middle that joins them all. That you open and they're all joined. So they would close those two doors. But that was kind of like the end of the locker room where like the coach stood for the halftime talk with the team. And I could stand there and listen to the coach talking on the other side of the door at halftime. And it's like you just don't get those experiences. And I remember watching, oh dude, it was, they didn't. Okay, so they knew I was a Saints fan, so they didn't let me perform the day the Saints were there. They're like, we're not convinced that you're not going to rip your shirt off and have a fleur-de-lis painted on your chest and run across the field. I was like, that's a good call.
That's a good call. Good call.
That's a good call.
Well played.
Yeah, I would have gotten fired for that. But so they bought me tickets in the end zone right by the tunnel where the Saints come out. They hooked it up. I got to go to the game, and I showed up on the Saints website as like Saints fans in Atlanta. I thought it was awesome. And we won, but it was like one of those, they didn't win a single home game, but we only won 17-13.
Yeah.
You know how the Saints Falcons games go. You can be the worst and the best, and they're going to play like it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
I also know how Falcons Patriots games go.
The one game that I'm referring to that I'm about to tell you about was the Monday Night Football game when New England came into town and played in Atlanta. And that was the game that Vince Wilfork ruptured his Achilles on like the end zone before the Falcons were about to score. And it was the whole place booed him because they thought he was just stopping to like slow the momentum. But he had like a half of a grapefruit size like knot on the back of his leg. It was bad. And it's Vince Wilfork. Like, that of all the people in the NFL, that man's Achilles tendon does more work than anyone else's. Right. Like, because he's on the line. Yeah. And that Achilles tendon gets a workout literally more than anybody. Maybe not as much as JJ Watts. Yeah. Maybe his gets a work, but Vince Wilfork. But Tom Brady. So the rule was, if you're walking out of the locker room and onto the field, there was a red carpet that came from the A, B, C, D locker rooms all the way out to the tunnel and onto the field. And if there were any players on the red carpet, you had to stand back. You couldn't be near the red carpet while the players are walking out. And again, talk about a different caliber of athlete. It's like with the very first time you go and watch World Championship Wrestling, it was that when I was a kid. WWE now. Yeah. When you go watch WWE and you're watching like people the size of The Rock just walk by and they're like, it's like this. It's the same thing. Yeah. You're just watching these like behemoths walk by, and and when you're a kid, they seem even bigger. Sure, because you're little. But I'm 6 foot tall. I'm grown. I'm 200 pounds. Tom Brady walked by. He was walking by, and he was in his Patriots blue and white, and he walked by. And I didn't realize he was 6'4". Let's start there. I didn't realize he was that tall. But he's got cleats on that give him like another 3/4 of an inch. Sure. Yeah. And then he's got a helmet on, and then from his head to the outside of the top of his helmet might be giving him another inch or two. Yeah. So at this point, he looks like he's about 6'6". And it's so when I see them on the field like that, it gives me a different respect for when I see them on TV, because I see how little Tom Brady is in that huddle. Like, I see how small he is compared to everyone else that is on that field. Yeah. And then I watched him literally with my own eyes, as close as I am to you, watched him walk by, and I was looking up at him. Like, he was huge. And then I see him on TV, and again, he was only 6 inches taller than me, but he's got those pads, and he's going on the field to play the game, to get hit. Well, we know Tom Brady doesn't get hit. to attempt to get hit, to dodge hits from 350-pound players. And it gives me a better appreciation for like Drew Brees is my size. He's 6 foot tall. He's 5 pounds. And we're not built the same way, clearly. But it gives me a better appreciation for the size of the rest of the men on that field when I see Tom Brady look like the little guy in class, because he looks like the little guy back there with all those, especially now that he's in Tampa, because now he's got like the full power of the SEC behind him, because the NFC South's got almost more SEC players than anybody else. Yeah. And he's got like, he's in the NFC now, and he's got some bone crushers on those lines now, and he just looks like a little guy. Yeah. And I've seen him. He's big. He's like 240 pounds. Like, he's not even like a little guy. Like, he's a big guy, and he's a big guy. Yeah. He definitely doesn't look the way that he plays. That's for sure. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Walk me through a day because of being at WLOX and getting the show going, because I've heard you say a few times that like you'll go and interview people and whatnot. And I'll be honest with you, it almost strikes me as odd. Like, I kind of figured that you as an anchor, all the research was done for you, given to you, and then your job is to read it off. It is. So I'm an anchor and a reporter. Okay. So I'll when I get to work somewhere between 3 and 3:30. And the first thing I do is sit down and open up the show. It's in the electronic news production system. It's called ENPS, and it's like copywritten by the Associated Press. So it's everything that we plug into that system is what we use to like fire the cues. It's got all the prompts and the codes, all the coding for the show, like what mics, because everything's automated now. The system cuts on mics and cuts them off when they're like they push buttons and they're firing graphics and firing videos and bringing us up and taking us out and mics coming on and coming off and all that stuff happens kind of just by they're just like pushing buttons now. And so I'll get in at 3:30. I'll just open the show and start reading. Because you got our producers Zach and Tara, they're compiling the shows all night long. And so by the time we get there at 3, they're just putting fine touches. Now, they don't write the whole show because you never know when something's going to happen. So you got to they're programmed to leave holes and gaps in places in case something happens between now, whatever time now is, and the time that the show actually airs. That way they have room to push things in and move things around. And if breaking news happens, if God forbid, anything crazy should happen, they can just plug that in.
Sure.
When Prince Philip passed, that's a prime example because ABC took over, and they just took control of it. It was a special report, and we lost it. But that was in the 6 o'clock hour. So when 6:30 came back, we were in the process while they were going over that, like rewriting the show and moving things around and making sure that we were ready to go and finish the show as soon as it came back on. So I'm reading everything and making sure that because I'll put like an ellipse where I want to pause.
Okay.
Because sometimes the sentences get a little long and there's a couple of thoughts happening in a sentence. So I'll where I want to put emphasis in, I'll go in and put like accents where I feel like a star, an asterisk by a word, if that's the word I want to emphasize. So I'll go through and make sure that based on what Zach or Tara has written, that what I'm reading, I can make flow. I can make happen while I'm, and so I'm not reading it cold for the first time. So I kind of have a general premise. And then at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm writing and producing the cut-ins. So during CBS This Morning, which is CBS's version of Good Morning America, they go to commercial, and then it's like during the commercial break, it'll say happening in South Mississippi, and they'll cut to us, and it'll be like a minute of what's going on and some weather. In Good Morning America, that happens live. So Meggan does that live, but it happens at the exact same time for CBS This Morning. So I record mine from the newsroom, and then that's why you see the newsroom behind me when I'm doing the CBS cut-ins.
Oh,
and
I
then,
see.
So they punch them into the system so that they run when that happens, so it looks live, while Meggan is doing it live. So I will write and produce all of those cut-ins. If Meggan's gone, I'll do the ones for ABC and CBS. So there's 4 each.
So you're doing all the editing that you need to do for that, any sort of sound adjustments, you're doing all that as well?
No. So if I need to do any editing for video, we have an editor there.
Okay.
God rest his sweet soul. Darren is phenomenal. And just today we're doing a story about there was two masked gunmen shooting in Moss Point, and it was I didn't use the interview. I just went straight to I just did it was just a VO, which just means it's just video, and the anchor's reading it, and there wasn't a sound bite from somebody, so it went straight into, at the end of the sound bite, it cut to the image of the silver Honda. And then it went on in the tag to say, take a look at this video if you've seen this car. But I didn't need the sound. I needed so I just walked up to him and said, I'm going to just use the clip after the soundbite of the car. Can we just get that added into?
Yeah.
And he's like, done. So I don't know where that's saved. I could do it myself, but I have to go find where that actual piece is saved so I can cut it and trim it and stick it in here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But he's
his job.
Yeah, he's so good at it. New videos coming in when Desiree and Bill are doing their live shots, and it might be something that I want to do, and they're sending it in now. My cut in is in 5 minutes, and I'll say, would you able to put that video into the cut in? And it's done. He's phenomenal. Yeah. And his wife works in the control room.
Oh, really?
She's a technical media producer. So she's in our ear. Maybe she's a director. I don't know exactly what her title is. She's calling, like, in the middle of reading this, in our ears, we're hearing, what camera we're supposed to be looking at, and how many we're getting a countdown of what's coming up, of what's left out of weather, and what we're coming to. So while we're reading and seeing what's happening, we're actually, the producers and directors are talking to us in our ears the whole time.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of multitasking happening. But once we get all that done, then I go out and I'll make sure that the shots are set. So that way when it comes on, they don't have to like move the camera while I'm talking. It's set, it's ready to go. Today was different because we did a special thing for Desiree.
Right.
So we lied to her basically. So it's a good lie, right? It's like one of those lies when you're getting somebody something. I'm like, I lied
tell
to
the story. You were telling me before we started, and it's a funny story. I'm sure people would appreciate the backstory there.
So I got in a little early because we all made breakfast for her. We all brought in like some kind of breakfast item. Meggan and I both baked something separate. Yeah. So we went in, and I went back and of the years, Desiree's been with us for 3 years, and I went back for all the years and like tried to pull like live shots and stand-ups that she'd done, and like it was just a graduation of like of her look over 3 years. It just she's beautiful, right? Like when she gets on a live shot, really, like I don't know what it is about the lighting that I need her light. I don't think it's her light. I think it's a lot more than her light, but I'm going to say that. But it's just like it comes on and Megan's like, maybe I won't miss her. It was a joke though, but she's beautiful, right? So she comes on after Wesley's weather, and Zach, we've decided that we're going to tell Zach, or Zach's decided that he's going to fake a breaking news scenario, and it was a story about a big alligator that was found in St. Martin yesterday or the day before. This big 7-foot gator. That's what she was going to be reading. So as soon as Wesley's weather is over, he's like, all right, we got breaking news. I've put in the script, just read the prompter. Breaking news. Here we go. And so Desiree's like, oh, well, breaking news right now into the newsroom. A woman has something about a woman that is on the run. She's been on the run for the last 3 years, and she's got nothing to lose. And it cuts to the video of this woman that's on the run, and it's a video of her. And she's like, and she's got nothing to lose. And and she looks and she just started laughing, and it was great because she's like, oh, she's been on the run for 3 years and she's finally getting out of town. And it was like, so she read it, she realized it was about her, but we're showing this video, and then it comes back to the shot of Desiree and myself and Meggan and Wesley, and we talked for 2 or 3 minutes about, what the last 3 years have been like and how she's a lock. Like I couldn't find blooper reels of hers. She didn't make mistakes. Like she never made mistakes in her live shots. The only thing is whenever she would record, like we'll be standing there before we record our bit, and we'll go 3, 2, 1, and it gives the editor time video to cut.
Okay.
But like she'll, like in some of the videos, she's like fixing her hair, and that was all I had.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have any mistakes. I just have you fixing your hair, so I'm going to put that on TV so everyone can see what you look like when you're getting ready for your live shot. So we can see you getting ready for that. So we did that today. Yeah. We orchestrated that. But then it's 5 to 7. It's reading the news, and we goof off a lot in the commercial breaks, a lot more than what you see in the 6:30. Facebook Live, but then we go Facebook Live. We would like to marry that Facebook Live into something else. We would like that to be kind of how it starts, and then move into maybe like on Fridays we're like, this is what we like to cook, and then have like a little Facebook Live from the studio into the kitchen where we're cooking. Like I made cookies one time, and it was I was looking for chocolate chip cookies for one of the executive producers. She goes, my mom always brings donuts to the station. She'll say it in her Facebook Live, and she'll say, I'm bringing donuts, and Cassie's like, stop bringing donuts, bring cookies. So I made cookies, and they were the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever had. So I just made those, and it became a bit on Facebook Live. And it was like, we're trying to figure out ways to like give some new breath to the show, and I'd like to do it through Facebook Live and through some social media, but that was a way to do it, and we just haven't explored it past that. Facebook Live is something that Brad thought of. He's like, and when you guys are doing the show, go Facebook Live, and it's like you've seen it before. It's a nice behind the scenes look at, you can see the whole set, you can see the things that, like, whenever we mess up in a story, like as soon as we go to commercial, that's when we talk about all the mistakes we made. Yeah. And it's like, you don't get to see or hear that stuff. And it's also weird for folks who are watching, if we have the volume in the station turned down in the studio, then you can't hear what's happening. You just hear us talking. So you're missing the graphic sounds, you're missing the interview sounds, you're missing the sounds of the video. So you just hear what it sounds like in an empty studio. So it's a whole bunch of, it's a different feel across the board.
Yeah. You get to see, people singing in between, you know.
We definitely get that. We sing, we dance, we goof off. I mean, there was a fly in the studio today, and the worst thing is when there's a fly, because you don't know if it's going to land on your face in the middle of a story, and you're going to have to like.
And now you're Mike Pence, like.
Exactly, the fly in your head. Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. I was in the middle of GMM, and a termite fell from the ceiling and landed on the computer in the middle of the show, and it just fell. I was like, oh, it's that time of year again. It's that time of year again. So I waited for the commercial break before I got him off the computer because I couldn't just like lean down.
Right.
They're just gross.
Yeah.
They're like roaches
really
to
are.
me. They're just gross.
Yeah.
You get all of your clothes.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah. So let me ask you, what's one of the more difficult stories that you've had to deal with?
So last week I was doing Gulf Coast Good News, and it was a story about Abby Bosarge.
Okay.
She's the girl from Pass Christian who has been diagnosed with, I forget what, some kind of myeloid something leukemia.
Okay.
And she was given this ablative therapy, and it was the only therapy they had available. And they were trying to explain to her that a lot of people don't make it through the therapy, that she wasn't going to make it. And she's 17 or 18, and she was in Texas. And a lot of her friends and teachers went to Texas so that she could graduate. And she said something, and she said, and I'm going through, I'm away from my family, I'm away from my friends, I'm going through therapy, and I'm doing these papers and doing this classwork for letter grades that aren't even going to matter when I'm gone. And I mean, that's heavy. That's heavy for a grown person. But an 18-year-old who's just graduated high school, that's super heavy. And as she's explaining what that was like and how painful it was, and she's just like, she's not crying, but she's like, tears are coming down her face, and she's got a mask on and she's got a hat on, and she's explaining what's going on, and she's not crying, but she's crying. Like she's holding it together enough to tell us what's going on, what's happening. And tears are going down, and then she was sent home on hospice, and I believe she went to Disney. I don't know if that means she's not on hospice, if she's doing better. I don't know what that means, but I think she's embraced the idea that she's not guaranteed anything, whether it's tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. Yeah. So at the end of the day, she's like, I'm just going to live like tomorrow's the last day. It's cliche to say,
sure,
until you're in that position.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I know I'm on hospice, so I'm going to Disney.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear a mask anyway because my immune system's compromised, but so is everyone else. So I'm just going to go to Disney and I'm going to enjoy my time there. She's was a 2 or 3 sport athlete, like super athlete. She wanted to see in Orlando. I forget Orlando's soccer team. I believe it was their soccer team, the Orlando Pride, maybe the Orlando something. I forget who it was. I think it's their soccer team. She wanted to go see an Orlando sport. She got to do it. There was one of her one of her favorite athletes. I don't know which sport it was from. Actually ended up FaceTiming or Zooming with her, so she actually got to talk to her like her role model. So she's experiencing some really awesome things that people don't get to experience it, but at a really, really, really tough price. And just watching her, she said at the end of the story, she said a lot of people would tell me, they tell me every day, like with the card you're dealt, you're the most unlucky person in the world because you have this rare form of cancer and the one that has like the most difficult treatment to live through, and you've got it. She's like, and I can't help but feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. And it's Gulf Coast Good News. I was like, I'm just like trying not to cry and then of course, if you're watching it, if you go back and watch it, you can see them online. If you go back and watch, you can see that my eyes look completely glossed over and they're a little red. And I'm just like, the whole time I'm like, ignore the story, keep don't cry. Cause it's just hard. And then a block later, they followed it up with Garrett Connard, who's the Stone County pitcher, whose father was the athletic director that passed away.
Okay.
And watching this guy at 17 years old do things that I've seen professional athletes say is the hardest thing they've ever had to do. Watch Brett Favre talk about playing a football game after his dad died, saying it was the hardest thing he's ever had to do. And I watched this 17-year-old Stone County high school baseball player go out and pitch the game of his career, 2 hits, but it was a shutout, and did it 2 days after his dad died. And he was just like, I know that my dad would have told me to get out there and do it. So it was a playoff game. And I was the next man up. It was time to play. So And then our guy, Blake Brannon, is the reporter, and he was just like, part of his copy, and that he was like, a pitcher's mound is usually the loneliest place to find yourself on the baseball field.
Yeah.
And then he cuts to a soundbite of Garrick saying, my dad was with me, the whole time. Like, I'd throw a bad pitch and he'd say, shake it off. You got another one to pitch. When we won the game, he's like, don't get satisfied. You still got work to do. Get out there and do it. Just to hear people who are, half my age doing things that I've heard grown professional adults say is the hardest thing they've ever had to do. And they're just rolling with the punches. It's hard to hear that, because it even if for a very small amount of time, it gives you that faith in humanity.
Yeah.
It's like, and they're kids. I mean, they don't want to be called kids, but they haven't graduated. I mean, I guess they're graduating now, but they're 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
And they're going through things that adults find difficult to make it through. And they do it with a smile on their faces, knowing that in Abby's case, she's really the luckiest girl in the world. And in his case, his dad's not gone. He's right there with him. It's the human condition.
For sure.
For me, those are the hard ones.
Well, that's the hero's tale, right? I mean, it's the tale of, somebody that looks like you, is a human just like you, confronting the dangers of the world that you're scared to confront, showing you that it's possible to do. Like they're emblematic of what transformative power we all have within ourselves. And unfortunately, it takes something tragic like that in order for us to learn that about ourselves, And I do find it fascinating this 17-year-old woman. What is it about somebody that goes through this, right? Having been only alive for 17 years, and now in this short amount of time get to experience many life-changing experiences, right? That maybe somebody who lived 70 years would not get to experience.
Sure.
Why do you think we do that? What's that about? Because there's this Make-A-Wish Foundation, and of course, if you tell, like chances are, if you tell an athlete, maybe not Aaron Rodgers, but if you tell an athlete, hey, this person, they're terminal, they're huge fans or whatever, would you mind just FaceTiming them real quick, And a lot of times they do that.
I think maybe it has to do with the fact that you're not going to get that opportunity to live long enough to have those experiences. You mentioned that, and a lot of people don't get those experiences. I don't, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that that, especially with a cancer battle, if you hit the ground running, you have a better chance of coming out on the other end of it, feeling better and living longer than if you sit back and say, woe is me. Why am I the one having to deal with this? I'm not strong enough. You have to go into something like that with the mindset that I'm going to fight, period. It's going to hurt. It's not going to be comfortable, but I'm not going to just lay down and let it take over. I'm going to fight it. And I know that, in situations like that, when your role model, you get to FaceTime them one-on-one, that they understand as role models that there's something that does to the human condition because you see when you it's that rush of endorphins. It's like that release of energy in your soul that gives you that desire to keep going. Yeah. Especially, God forbid, if that role model has a similar story.
Yeah.
I have a really good friend who passed away a number of years ago, Chris DeGatta. He played some minor league ball. He was an Italian D apostrophe Agata from New York. And he was, he was super dark complexion, dark hair, he was New York, right? So huge Yankees fan. And
you could be friends with this person.
Yeah, and I could be friends with this person, yeah, because we met in Florida. He was a Disney fan, so I was like, oh, okay, then we're good. We have a common tie that bonds. So he had Crohn's disease, which developed into some kind of abdominal cancer, but when they found it was stage 4. And he's talked about Andy Pettitte over and over and over again, and watched them win the World Series. And I have a friend whose mom is a close personal friend with Andy and his wife and their kids. And when he was in Texas, they used to babysit. When he would go out of town, they sang in church choir together. They were just friends. Yeah. And now he's gone on to the Yankees and he's won the World Series, and he's a Yankee. And I just was like, if he has it just a ball and that he can sign, I'll give it to Chris. This will change his life. Because you don't get those. And he was just like, absolutely. Absolutely. And when Chris got that ball, it was just like, it's hard to explain. Like there's something that happens. Mm-hmm. It's like, it isn't, I'm not going to say that it's like it gives you the will to continue on, but it's like in the midst of everything that's going wrong, there's still a chance that really, really good things can happen. Even if it's your, favorite pitcher for the Yankees right now signing a baseball. Yeah. It's like, it helps you to, and Chris was that guy that would literally go to the hospital, get his chemotherapy and go to the gym. Like, he didn't get sick. It didn't make him, he didn't lose his hair. Yeah. Like, he had this like pompadour of like Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, Neil Diamond, just like big chocolate brown coif of hair that he never lost a strand of. And I was like, Chris, I hadn't shaved my head. I was like, if you lose your hair, I'll shave my head with you. And he never lost his hair. When he passed, full head of hair, and went through like 9 months of chemotherapy and a couple months of radiation. Never lost a strand. I don't know. Maybe it's all of the, the mozzarella, and maybe it's all of the, because this wine, dude, all he had was
maybe that's what kills
wine and
cancer.
Cheese. So he was, but that moment where he got that ball and saw that it was Andy Pettitte's signature was like, it was a realization to him that there are people going through worse things. This is horrible, right? But there are people that have lost their children, that have lost their parents, and I'm going through this. It's a card I've been dealt, but if it wasn't strong enough to deal with this card, it wouldn't have been dealt to me. Yeah, that became the mantra that he adopted, and was given 3 to 6 months to live, and lived like another 3.5 or 4 years. Wow, and just like hit the ground running. But moved out of his apartment and bought a condo in downtown Orlando and bought a BMW. It was like, if I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out and enjoy my life.
I like it.
He did. He bought this is back when first time I'd ever driven a BMW where when you turn the wheel, the headlights turned.
Oh yeah.
The direction you were turning. I was like, it's too much. It's too much. It was a 325i, I believe. Super low.
I love BMWs.
They're my favorite.
Yeah, for sure. And so I spent some time in Germany. I was deployed to Germany. And so we got a car to drive around. Of course, it's going to be like a Volkswagen, Mercedes, or BMW. And so we had to turn them in every 3 weeks or whatever. But man, the BMWs, they're just different. Like the car feels like it's like, I don't know, you're part of the car. You know what I mean? It just feels like it's part of you. And I don't get that feeling in a BMW or in a Mercedes. I don't get that feeling in a Volkswagen either. They're great cars and they're solid. There's no play.
Sure.
They're great cars.
It's supposed to be an extension of you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I drive a Jeep.
Yeah. Well,
it's a Gladiator. I had an actual Wrangler before, but I love the Gladiator because it's a truck.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And that's just.
You like those?
It's nothing going to get in your way. I mean, except for an 18-wheeler, maybe a dump truck.
Right.
But I couldn't get out. I was sitting in the parking lot. And I was like, I could just drive over this curb and then this grass. And I was like, but then people saw me get in the car and they were like, that's the guy from the news and he's driving on the grass at Starbucks. I'm like, I'll just wait.
Well, that's got to be some pressure, right? I mean,
it's the worst kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And here's the thing for folks that are watching, I don't. When people say hello to me, I have the worst memory. It's bad, but I get really self-conscious and anxiety ridden if I'm trying to think if I know this person and I'm supposed to know this person and I just forgot their name, or if I don't know this person and they just see me on TV. So when somebody
that's weird, right? Because people kind of feel like they know you a bit, Well,
they're like, I see you every morning. I'm like,
yeah. You're like, come up, hey Chet.
You'll see me before I see you.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're like, and that's the thing is, folks they'll say hi Chet, and I don't, and it just I immediately have a moment of like the worst possible anxiety. I'm great for not being able to show. Like I love that I'm not able to show that. The adrenaline just is, and I'm like, and they're like, and the best part is I guess my face is just doesn't lie really well because they're like, no, I see you on TV. You don't know me. I'm like, oh, thank you. Because I was
that's so nice.
Trying to remember
that they left you off the hook.
To know you.
Yeah.
And then there was something just like, I'm like, no, I'm supposed to know this one. Nah, you don't know me. No. I see you on TV. I'm like, oh, like it just sits there. I'm just like, oh,
That is a weird thing because like, you know, you get anxiety and I'm sure it's not from talking to people. I mean, you've got plenty of experiences talking to people, many people, but it's like, it must come from this, man, I really don't want to disappoint you kind of deal.
That's it. And there's people from high school that I see that haven't it was Johnny Langford is a really good friend of mine. He lives in Atlanta now. I grew up doing theater with him and I saw him about 6 years ago when he came back. We came back to do a show together. But last time I saw him, he was a kid. Now he had like long hair and a beard and he was married and his kids. He's a man. And I introduced myself to him. And I was like, hi, I'm Chet Landry. He goes, hi, I'm Johnny Langford. And I was just like, like you were a kid last time I saw you. And I'm always worried that that's what's going to happen. Like I'm going to introduce myself to someone and it's going to be like my best friend from like the 7th grade.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, I'm that guay. The worst. Like that's what I feel like is always going to happen when somebody says my name.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I wanted to ask you this earlier, and we just, you know, of course, we get off on tangents, but it seems like there's a lot of people in the news that were thespians or were involved in entertainment. Is this just kind of a common track of people that kind of enjoy performing?
That's a funny you should ask that question. I was told when I got the job that as a performer, 80% of what you're going to do as a reporter, you already do. Because you're standing in front of a camera, you're delivering your message warmly, and you're being inviting, and you speak clearly, you enunciate really well. So, and for the most part, you practice a non-regional diction.
Yeah.
So a lot, and you're a performer, so you know your audience. So 80% of what you need to be able to do to be a reporter or an anchor, you already know. He's like, and my boss was like, I can't teach you that. I can't teach you how to deliver your lines compelling. I can't teach you how to sound genuine if you're talking about a story that you don't really care about. I can't teach you those things. And as performers, you're actors. So you're used to portraying characters that aren't you, in some cases that are opposite of you. And so you're already good at that. The other 20%, which is part of the news, I can teach you. So Mike Lacey's a performer, Megan's a performer, Rhonda's a performer, Karen's a performer, I'm a performer, Jonathan Brannon was a performer. So that's
interesting.
It's, I mean, the perfect job would be to go to New York and get a gig on Good Morning America and then leave that gig at lunchtime and take a nap and then go to a Broadway show at night.
Yeah.
That'd be the perfect gig.
Sure.
Like the absolute, and the way Broadway shows are going, well, before the pandemic, you had to be just about a reality TV star, or if you're a TV star, you sell tickets. That's kind of where it was headed. That's the direction it was going. There's a lot of like, you know, reality show stars, competition, American Idol, The Voice. A lot of those stars are going into roles here because they sell a lot of tickets. You know, Broadway stars are Broadway stars. They're always going to be there. But new and upcoming Broadway stars are like folks that have been on TV and that already have a very large Instagram or social media following. They know that their followers are going to be there to come and see them. So it's funny how that industry changes a little bit.
Yeah. But does that kind of ruin the purity of it? I mean, because
you know, I don't know, because here's the thing: you get people like Kristen Bell, who is forgetting Sarah Marshall. She's done a ton of movies.
Oh, she's fantastic.
She started in musical theater. So it doesn't. Like a lot of those individuals who are on like in major motion pictures started in theater. So it's only like finally catching up that some people who started on TV find their way back to theater. I worked my tail off to get my equity card and never got to be in a show on Broadway. But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't make it any less awesome if, you know, now, if you were a reality show star and you won the competition and you've only been singing for, you know, 6 months, 7 months. I don't know how that translates to somebody who's been singing in smoky bars for 20 years before they got their first record label.
Yeah.
Like your Chris Stapletons of the world.
Yeah.
Who now that he's been signed, why didn't anyone ever sign him before? But he spent so many years in smoky bars performing for 80 people, 200 people, 300 people, and now he's packing out arenas. And it's like those people work their lives in very small venues for low money and never make it. And then you get somebody on a Voice or American Idol that does it for 6 months and signs a huge contract.
There is.
I don't know how that works out.
There's a place in Ocean Springs, Rock U 2. It was Rock U, and then they made another one, Rock U 2. And so it's in a building that was it's next to the Bourget Fire Department. It used to be a senior living home, right? And so there's a bunch of rooms. Well, they gutted the building, they soundproofed every single room. And the people that run it, one of them used to be a Disney executive. And they're essentially a farm for like American Idol, America's Got Talent, and they fly people in to the area, and he teaches everything from music production, like mixing large 32 channel soundboards, video production. He teaches that, singing, dancing, guitar, piano, bass, drums, all of it, everything that you need to do. And they put on a concert once a year at the Hard Rock, actually, but they've got kids from like 5 years old all the way up to adults. And because he's worked in the entertainment industry at such a high level, he's got a reputation. I'm sure that's important. These executives of these shows will call him and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Do you have this kind of talent here? And so he produces some of those people that actually get put on those shows.
That's the tough pill to swallow that a lot of folks don't recognize or realize in the entry level is they're casting a show.
Yeah.
So you have to have every type of character represented.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a talent show. But the talent isn't really on full display until you get down to like the bottom 10, 15, 20. Yeah. That's when talent really becomes a big deal because everyone's story is out and producers and judges and mentors have taken stories and helped mold this person into this performer, this artist. And then by the time they're done doing what they're going to do, you're down to the bottom 10 or 20, and now it's time to sing.
Yeah.
And that's when the talent comes out. But it's like you got your William Hungs of the world who get their record label signs them because they're not good singers. But he has, 12 million followers. I don't know if he does or not. That's just arbitrary. But now they love him because people love him. He has an album. He's not a great singer at all, but he just went platinum.
Yeah.
Because he's got fans, because they've built him, they've made him into what he is. And
yeah. He's sort of transacting one set of values for another, right? So he's taking he's essentially monetizing his followership. It's no different than exactly. him making a post. He's just saying, yeah.
They're casting a movie.
Yeah.
On every show. Big Brother, all of the reality shows, they're looking for characters for their play, for their show.
Yeah.
And they get them. They find them. I mean, they have tens of thousands of people that go walk through those cities. Well, I don't know if they may be still doing virtual, but tens of thousands of people in every city.
Yeah.
And they find what they're looking, because they'll know today we're looking for this age group and we're looking for these 5 character types. We're looking for this. When this person walks in, send them our way.
Yeah.
Can they sing? Sure.
It's just crazy to think that this small, coastal town, is producing talent, is this sort of almost a regional mecca for talent distribution. I'm sure there's places in New Orleans and Atlanta, so maybe the comparison to Mecca is probably inaccurate, but it's still just a hub for people to fly in. Like I think the people that own the PV company in Meridian, their daughters would be flown down here to be instructed in person by them.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we had Camille Lamb from was from the Pass. I think she's from the Pass Christian.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And she was in the, I guess, bottom 100.
Yeah.
I don't know how far into the show she made it, but she was in it. I mean, there've been folks from this area of the country. I mean, the guy from New Orleans that was like the Elvis kind of guy a couple years ago that won.
Yeah.
The guy, the gray-haired guy that kind of sounded like Michael McDonald, Taylor Hicks from Alabama, Bo Bice. Like there have been a handful of folks in this like 3-state area that have done well. Yeah, Derek Norsworthy is I think he just did a song, Circles, I think, that CMT put on. But yeah, it's
there's a lot of talent here, and back to the Broadwater property, maybe they see some of that in this area, so, but yeah, it's a very, very artistic, musically inclined area.
I hope it works.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. What they're talking about, what they're pitching is, it's a heck of a,
very ambitious.
That's exactly right. It's ambitious.
Yeah, very ambitious.
That's what I said about the bow. When they announced the bow, it was like, then it was $690 million.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like prime rib in a bologna market.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said it was back then. And then when Katrina came through, it cost them another $300 million to fix it. And I'm like, but it for a long time, I don't know if it still is, but for a long time, it was in the top tier of performance, the top performance tier in their portfolio.
Right before COVID, I realized that they were doing professional fights like WBO boxing matches out of there. I was like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to go to them because I just moved back down here. But and then of course,
thank COVID.
Yeah. Well, Chet, what's next for you?
You know what? I don't think I'm going to go anywhere.
Okay.
I think I'm good here. Like I told my boss, I said, if you put me in that seat, I'll retire there. You'll have to kick me out.
Okay.
However, I said, should Kelly Ripa or Michael Strahan / Robin Roberts call, I'm going to go. I'm not even going to give you a notice. You're just going to wake up one morning and Meggan's going to run the whole show and you're going to turn on GMA and there I'll be. And you'll be like, that's where he went. But I don't, I'm 43. I don't have any.
You are a young looking 43.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Don't have any aspirations of being in larger cities. I've lived in some pretty big cities. I've traveled the world. I'm perfectly, all my family is here.
Yeah.
All of my friends are here. I don't have any desire to go anywhere else at all. And I'll be good. I'm perfectly fine with that. And I'll travel.
Yeah.
Because I've traveled the world mostly as a performer, but I was working. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to travel without being on the time constraints of an employee.
Yeah.
I want to go and spend a week here, spend a week there. But it's a different world now. Like we said that after 9/11, we say that all the time. COVID's here and it's different. There's, it'll
just be what it is. I mean, it's going to be the next. You won't even think about it.
It'll be the flu before long.
Yeah.
Where'd the flu go?
I know, right?
Like, I haven't heard flu numbers yet.
And it's tough because there's a money making opportunity there for hospitals. So it's kind of, I do not like any conspiracy theorists.
I'm not really for them either.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
But I haven't heard anything about it.
Well, so hospitals were subsidized when they were taking care of COVID patients, and the COVID symptoms seem to be very similar to flu symptoms. And so the theory is that hospitals are financially incentivized to misdiagnose. And of course, we know that happened because that kind of came out like late last summer, I think, where they were saying that hospitals were misdiagnosing the numbers. If you had like chest pains and you died, they might call that COVID because they weren't able to test you, and then you died because of that. So there was definitely a possibility of misallocating the numbers, and I think that's why. That might be why we don't seem to see the flu. It could also be the case that wearing the masks and being isolated
hands and staying clean.
Yeah.
Like, if it taught us anything, it's that we're dirty.
Yeah.
Like if it's really just wash your hands and wear a mask, like is it because we're
Well,
I don't know if I have any fingerprints left. As much hand sanitizer as I've used in the last year and a half.
It definitely begs the question how it's going to affect the work environment, because what we've shown is for over a year, we've been able to comply with the mask policy, right? And so normally if you were sick at work, they might say, okay, well, I've got a bad cough. Okay, well, stay home. And for the better part of human history, as we've gotten into modern medicine, nobody thought just put a mask on and come to work. You know what I mean?
But they wear them in hospitals.
Right,
Everyone.
exactly. Yeah. And so it's interesting, what history is going to write about it, how it's going to affect us moving forward. I'm actually excited to see how it how it affects people being like working from home. I interviewed for a project management job at Ingalls, and I walked into one of their administration buildings, and there was like probably a room full of 60 or 70 cubicles, right? And along the wall as well. And I would assume that under normal circumstances, that place would be a dull roar. Everybody's working from home.
Oh,
so
it's empty.
It's empty. Yeah. And so this building that obviously probably costs $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month to operate, you now no longer need a very small portion of it. So I think that businesses are going to see, obviously, that's a benefit. You know, we can stop having these huge office buildings, but I also think that places like Desperado here in Ocean Springs, are you familiar? So it's a coffee shop that has a small podcasting studio in it as well. People can come in and do a quick podcast, but they've got office space for rent. So you can come in and just rent space. They've got a Zoom room, they've got a conference room, all that stuff inside the coffee shop. And I see like a lot of these businesses maybe turning some of these strip malls into rentable office space. That would be booming in the summer because kids, they can't work from home because the kids are home. So maybe let me just go take care of my work in 46 hours at this place, you know, at this cubicle, rent the space. So
I always wondered what was going to happen to office parks.
Yeah.
When people realize they don't have to pay rent anymore because people can stay home.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I worked from home for probably 6 or 8 months of the whole time before I started anchoring, and I just set my computer. I went home with a laptop and plugged it into a docking station, set up 2 screens, and did everything there in my office at home. And it's still there because sometimes I'll go home and shoot a story on my way home and then load it into the system and have it there for the afternoon. But my day's over. And but yeah, we did. And there were a lot of marketing commercials when we first started doing it. Like there was some shots of me. It's like, shoot video of what it's like working at home. We'll put it in our, we're at home. We're still bringing you the news. But we're at home. And I was like, showed my dog. But it was different because you miss that buzz, that hum of the newsroom. Mm-hmm. But we're still.
I kind of think you might be like me. Like I need to be around people.
I do.
I just have to. I need to feed off of people's energy. I like talking to people. I like, that's why I'm doing this. You know what I mean? But it's too much, way too much. But
you lose out. You lose out.
Yeah.
I just, whenever I was gone, I was like, whenever you're ready for me to come back, I'll be glad to come back.
Yeah.
Because there's just something about that camaraderie.
Mm-hmm. It's a team. It's a news team. If you're used to
news team,
I love that. Do you watch Anchorman differently now?
Oh man, I haven't watched it since I've become an anchor.
Oh well, you got to do that.
I need to go back and watch it because I do say like when they're gonna pop me up there like you're live because we'll do a test and because there's been one time where they told me it was a test and I didn't hear it, and then the graphic for the start of the show happened and I was like, is this a test? And we were live and it wasn't a test. And he's like, no. And I was like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And then it came on, I was like, developing now. Yeah. I don't believe you. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
So you always lose the battle with the producer because they're the only ones that know if you're on.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the red light comes on regardless. A lot of times we have a Roku app and a Fire Stick app and an Apple TV app. Mm-hmm. So when they do all the tests, if they turn the cameras on and open it up for the test, then when we're on Roku, you can see that if you're watching on Roku. So a lot of times we'll goof off and talk to the folks watching on Roku or on the Fire Stick, and we'll dance and be silly. That you don't ever see that stuff.
Yeah.
From the camera. You see it from the Facebook Live, but you'll never see it from the way you would see it on the news. So it's just because we can see it on if you're streaming as well, if you're watching on the website.
Yeah, I watch it through YouTube TV, but I guess I'm going to go ahead and download that app. Yeah,
it's the WLOX News Now app. It's on Fire Stick. It's on Roku. It's on Apple TV.
Okay.
If you download that app and you just
shameless plug here.
Watch live. Yeah, I don't know what those viewerships are like, but if you watch that on there, anything that anytime they test the shots or the graphics and we're up, we're just hamming. We're just goofing off. And it's because we know that you're getting to see it like you would see it in the news, an actual news show, but we're not doing the news. We're just goofing off.
That's amazing.
So it's giving me that opportunity to use all my Anchorman quotes.
Right.
While I'm looking at the camera. Yeah. So a lot of them I can't say because he's foul and inappropriate.
Sure.
That's what makes him so great.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Chet, look, I've enjoyed talking to you. Goodness, 2 hours.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a record?
What's that?
Is that a record?
No.
Well, is it close?
No.
Not even close?
No.
What's your record?
It's like 4:11.
What?
Yeah.
Who was that?
It felt it might have been Patrick Mortensen. I think it was like 4 hours. Yeah, he's the son of Jeff Mortensen who ran for Alderman in Ward 5 in Ocean Springs. Me and Patrick went to high school together, but it was like 4 hours. So,
nice. Good times.
Yeah, it was a real good time. But the thing is, it goes by so quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like when you're just having a conversation with somebody, it doesn't feel like it's, taking as long as it is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, look, I was excited to do this. I'm thankful that you took the opportunity and blessed us with your presence. And
I love it.
I love you on the news. I love your suits. I love your energy, man.
I'm gonna keep it going.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I've got to get a seersucker suit. So you can't call yourself a Southerner unless you have a seersucker suit. You can't call yourself a Southerner. So hopefully next year when it's Kentucky Derby weekend, I'd like Friday to be like in a seersucker suit.
Okay.
I feel like I have to have one.
Well, I think you have to do that.
And the company that I get these from, they have a couple of them. So I'm like, I just have to have one.
Yeah, for sure.
Have to have one.
Well, how can people get in touch with you, follow you? And
my Twitter is Chet Landry, WLOX.
Okay.
My Facebook, my Facebook page is Chet Landry, WLOX. So my personal page just says Chet Landry. If I don't know you, I'll probably still accept it, but it's only so I can push you to my page because I haven't figured out how to push you to my page without being friends with you on my. So I think that's probably by design. I have that my email address is that's all on my Facebook page. My if story ideas, like if you have story ideas, if you think you have something that's newsworthy, if you have a human interest piece, somebody that's done something great, made Mississippi proud. We haven't really been doing it because of COVID. We used to do South Mississippi Strong. It's kind of like David Muir's America Strong, and it's like somebody that's done right by South Mississippi.
Yeah.
So we do those every once in a while. So yeah, my email address is easy. It's chetlandry@wlox.com. But all that stuff is on my Facebook page. You can see my office number and my email address. So I'm easy to get in touch with. You just have to go find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, anytime you got story ideas, that's the best part about doing local news is that to some extent, we want to cover what the viewers want to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if we don't, you're not going to watch. And we know that. And listen, I think that a good portion of why we're the number one news station in South Mississippi is because we've been here for almost 60 years, maybe a little more than 60 years. But it's because, the viewers trust what we're saying. Not that they don't trust what anyone else is saying, but when you've been here as long as our station's been here, it's like it's built in.
Yeah.
I watched WLOX because my parents watched WLOX. They watched it because their parents watched it. And it's like, now that...
And the longer you do it, the more fragile it becomes, right? Because it's so easy to lose that trust.
It like at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. A single story. And you're in the middle of a controversy.
I mean, you make one mistake and you use one acronym instead of the other acronym.
Right. Something as innocent as that.
Something as simple as saying NCAA instead of NAACP, for example. That could change the whole story. And you were just not paying attention. So yeah, fragile is a really, really good word for it because mispronouncing somebody's name, not being engaged in what you're reading, and you could say one thing wrong, and to you it doesn't matter, but to the person who sat for that interview, who was terrified, now it's a whole different. They're upset. Their name's been said wrong, and they're not going to watch, and their kids aren't going to watch, and you don't know how many people are going to be impacted by that. So it's a whole integrity thing. Like I get up in the morning early enough in my house so that when I get to work, I'm awake, and I want to be engaged because I know that the things that I'm saying might not be important to everyone, but it's important to someone. And for those people who rely on that on a daily basis, I want to be true to what they expect. I want to fulfill that expectation that they have because they've been watching it for so many years. So yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. And it's an anxiety that I have with this even. I did an interview, won't say with who, but where we got through it and I said, hey, look, we got to redo this. You can't put it out like this. This is not your message. I'm going to produce it for you. You watch it and you make the call on it. If you want to release it, I don't think it's a good idea, just because of kind of the language that they used and what they were talking about and whatnot. And I was like, I don't mind putting it out because you said it, but you know what I mean?
It's on you.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
Right.
But I think you're better off if we redo it and curate that section of it.
Sure.
So, but yeah, Chet, again, thanks for stopping by, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I love it.
All right,
It's been a
everybody.
blast.
We'll see ya. That's it.
Piece of cake.